This is my individual video walkthrough for Echoes of the Twin Tombs, a networked VR co-op escape room built in Unity using extra interaction toolkit and norm-core networking. My specialist focus was VR gameplay programming and UI systems. The game is designed around two separated players. One player works as the engineer and handles the physical interactions, while the other player works as the navigator and reads information that the engineer cannot see. This makes communication part of the actual gameplay, not just something extra on top. The core design and the main idea is that both players are in the same network game, but they do not have the same role, same view, or same information. This was important because the puzzles would be too simple if one player could see everything by separating the information. The game forces both players to talk and work together. At the start, both players go through the multiplayer lobby. One player creates the room, and the second player joins using the same room code. This allows both players to connect to the same norm code room before the actual puzzle sequence begins. The lobby flow was important for the old project because the room code system makes the multiplayer setup clear for players. It also gives the game a proper start point instead of just spawning people straight into the level without structure. After joining the room, the players choose their roles. This controls who becomes the engineer and who becomes the navigator. I worked on making sure the players are moved into correct areas after the game starts because the player puzzle design depends on both players being separated. I'm going to be explaining the role and spawn system. This was not just a normal player spawn. The system had to check the selected role, move each other to the correct side, and keep the co-op structure working. If both players spawned in the same place, the main design would fail. The first gameplay section introduces a simple physical co-op interaction. The players need to use the liver system to progress. This teaches them the game is based on timing, communication, and shared actions. When the player lets go of the liver on the process of opening the trapdoor closes back shut. It gives the player a clear first task before the game moves into more complex systems. It also helps to show that the project is using VR interaction, not just UI buttons. The next part of the puzzle is the astral relay puzzle. This puzzle separates the player more strongly. The navigator uses the telescope clue, which the engineer interacts with the physical star table. I wanted this puzzle to feel like a proper VR puzzle rather than a flat keypad. So the engineer has physical star orbs and sockets, while the navigator sees the constellation clue through the telescope. The solution depends on one player describing the pattern and the other player building it. The telescope view is a UI system made for VR. It shows the constellation, clue text, and the shape that needs to be recreated. The engineer cannot see this information, so the navigator has to explain it clearly. The navigator, so at the start, understands the answer, but the engineer has to physically solve it inside the room. The engineer then moves the star orbs into the sockets based on the navigator's instructions. The orbs snap into places so the player gets clear feedback when an object has been placed correctly. The main issue I had with this puzzle was the object jitter when the orbs snapped into sockets. I fixed this by treating snapping as a controlled state change instead of constantly forcing physics movement. Once an orb is placed into a socket, it locks into position. This makes the interaction more stable in VR and also makes the result clearer for both players. The players move into the prism reactor at the end. That's my puzzle. After the asteroid relay puzzle, they got two more puzzles, which was done by my fellow teammate. The last puzzle was kept there, and this was my main gameplay system because it combines puzzle logic, UI feedback, visual effects, and failure pressure. The prism reactor uses state-based logic instead of real laser reflection. The beams look physical, but the actual puzzle is controlled through target states. This was the better addition for the final build because it made the puzzle more reliable and easier to debug in a networked VR project. Each colored route can point to a target like moon, crown, or eye. The navigator reacts to the diagnostic information from the navigator side, and the engineer adjusts the prism routes based on that information. The script checks whether the current state matches the correct answer, and then the navigator presses the right buttons to get the reactor's life back. When a route is correct, it can be looked into the reactor. The beam updates visually, the UI changes, and the reactor begins moving towards the online state. And also, here is the post menu, which has the ends. The ends can be seen at any point of time of the gameplay, where it will give you more information on how you can solve the puzzle. And also, you've got a button for return to lobby when you want to restart the game, or like you want to go back and restart as a different side of player, which is either engineer or navigator. Another thing I forgot to mention is the status feedback in the reactor puzzle. The status feedback was added so players understand what the system is doing when the correct routes log or wrong activations are done. When there is three wrong activations, the reactor bursts and puts you back into the lobby, so you have to restart the game. Overall, my specialist contribution was VR gameplay programming and UI system. I worked on the multiplayer role flow, player separation, puzzle logic, socket snapping, telescope UI, reactor states, warning feedback, and reset behavior. The strongest part of my work is that these systems support real co communication instead of letting one player solve everything alone. This walkthrough shows the project connects physical VR interaction, networking, UI feedback, and role based puzzle design into one final co op escape room experience.